Hey y'all, how you doing? Hanging in there. It's a very warm day, so I'm just taking it easy. Got my newest diamond painting project all sectioned out for the part that's on my light board so I can start working on it. So that'll keep me busy for the day and keep my mind off my back hurting and the heat. Got myself a fan. Yeah, not super strong, but it's enough to get air blowing on me. So I still have not turned on my air conditioner yet this year. So, I'm pretty proud of the fact I haven't done that. But when I was talking to my counselor yesterday, we were going over my compulsive buying issues. And the more I come to realize things about my life and in my past, the more I think I'm a bit OCD. When I was doing my walking down the road back in 2014 and 2015 into 2016, when I left the house, I had to count my steps. Now, from my door to where I was walking to, which was partially down the hill, and back, was about 0.7 miles. So about 7/10 of a mile, maybe. And that also included coming down the driveway to my dad's house and then back up the drive. But I had to count my steps, or I just ended up with anxiety. And one of my main things is when I'm doing my diamond paintings, I block them out in 20 by 20 sections. But I have to count as I'm putting the pieces in place. And if I lose count, then I'm like, oh crap, what was my count? And if it's pretty early on getting into the sections, I'll recount. If not, I'll have to start back over, at 1. But what I do is I count up to 100 and then I start over. And if I don't do it, then my anxiety starts going up again. Being able to do my diamond paintings and doing the counting, my anxiety goes away. But if I'm talking on the phone, whether it be to like my aunt, my kids, whatever, of course I can't count while doing that. So my anxiety goes up again, which is really, it's really weird because, just the act of talking to my kids relieves my anxiety. But when I'm talking to them and I'm also working on my diamond painting and I can't count, then I have that push and pull of anxiety and stress relief just battling with each other. And, I know how many tarantulas I have. I have 73. At any other point in time, I know how many I have, period. But I still have to sit there and count periodically to prove to myself I still have them. And it's not really normal behavior. And I do it, I think, because it does help me relieve some anxiety that builds up in me, just like the compulsive buying relieves the anxiety that I get. And I'm still trying to determine where the anxiety is coming from, because I don't fully know. I'm very comfortable being alone. I am quite comfortable with that. And I keep things relatively stress-free in my life, so trying to figure out where that anxiety is coming from is going to be a key to helping me overcome my compulsions, so I don't have that anxiety anymore. But I'm still just really not sure why. And I've had the anxiety for a long time. I really have. Back when I was in the Tidewater area, I would find myself driving, and if I was at a stoplight, man, I would start getting anxiety symptoms, and things would start to tunnel vision and blur, and I would get this overwhelming feeling of lightness where I'm in the seat of my vehicle, but I feel as if I'm weightless and I'm drifting off of it. Luckily, I haven't had that happen for quite a long time, but I know what panic attacks are as well. After Dad died, I got panic attacks every time I even thought of going out. And Dad died on October 2nd of 15. At Easter in 2016, my husband and I went out to Easter dinner with my aunt and uncle, and that was a major overload for me. I kept having to run to the bathroom into a stall just to get away from people. And, one of the things was, one of the ladies that knew my dad from him bringing his Altima into the shop, because she worked there, is I ran into her while I was at that dinner. So, of course, talking about Dad, that just sent me into overload as well. My panic attacks have really gone away, but the anxiety that drives them is obviously still there, or I wouldn't be having to do these compulsive things to relieve it. Now that I'm more aware, I am trying very hard not to do the counting while I'm working on my diamond painting. The other day when I was working, instead of counting to 100, I would go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. but I'm trying to curtail that need by keeping the knowledge that I do these things in the forefront. That way I can deal with the anxiety, but I can also deal with it in a healthier way than these obsessive compulsions. I never really knew I was so neurotic until I got into my counseling. I just, I knew I was different and weird and quirky, but I didn't realize I was quite so neurotic. But at least I can laugh about it. It's not easy to overcome these things. And the first step in overcoming them is, of course, acknowledging that there's a problem. And then working to find out what that problem stems from or is caused by. And then, in my case, that anxiety, now we're trying to figure out what's causing my anxiety that leads to my obsessive compulsions. Not going to be fixed in a week or so. It's going to take a while, I know. But that's the reason I'm staying in counseling, is so I can get to the roots of the issues that cause my neuroses. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have not been diagnosed with anything other than chronic depression when it comes to mental health. I as far as I know, I'm not on the spectrum. I'm not I'm not OCD. I'm not antisocial. I have nothing but chronic depression. And a lot of times my depression is more situational than it is just normal, everyday depression. Once the situation has been resolved and dealt with, usually my depression really does go away. But because it does happen so often, that's why it is classified as chronic. But maybe I have other issues. Maybe I don't. I'm not really sure it would make a difference if I were diagnosed with some of those. It wouldn't change my therapy at all. It wouldn't change the way I do things or the way I see things. So I'm not too worried about it, as long as I can continue to recognize the issues, the mechanisms I use to avoid the issues. And the more I learn to cope, the less the issues will have a hold on me. And that's what I want. So, it is, it's hard looking at yourself through that clear image of, okay, you're not as well as you thought you were. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm depressed. Okay, but the more in depth I get into things, the more I realize maybe I'm not as okay as I thought I was. And, I know it's okay to not be okay. And the more I delve into things, the better my life will become, the less coping mechanisms I'll have to employ, the less it'll lead to less anxiety. And, that's one of the purposes of working on me. So I'm not trying to be overconfident in myself, or even toot my own horn, but I do know it takes a very strong person to look at yourself without any filters and to willingly want to get to the absolute root of what causes issues, work through it, and not let it have control of your life. I am a very strong person. Maybe not physically, but mentally, you're not gonna break me, and I'm not gonna let anything break me. I got my strength from my mom and my dad, and on their own, they were extremely strong people mentally. Mom, not quite so much as dad, but she had her moments where, she was also mentally tough, but she also had a lot more issues than I do. So their combined strength has created me. And life has tried to break me. It's tried to bend me. I'll bend, but to a point. And then it's like, no more. And there's been two things that have almost broken me, and that was Dad's death and Lovey's death. But there's only one thing I think could ever break me, and that would be losing one of my kids or grandkids. I'm not sure I could survive that kind of issue, which, no parent ever wants to think it would happen. And, I have been so lucky in my life with how well things are for my kids. So it's not like I expect it. It's just I'm that kind of person that I think of those things. So, hopefully I'll never find out. Because that's not something I would ever want to face, and I wouldn't wish anybody to face it. Because we as parents live for our kids. And to have to outlive your child or grandchild is one of the hardest things I think anybody could ever have to do. All right, I'm done rambling. Part of my therapy is making sure I push past my comfort levels to step out of my comfort zone, and making these videos is a very big leap outside of my comfort zone. I'm not comfortable being in front of the camera. I know I've said it at least once, maybe a few times, that a lot of times you don't see me looking at the camera. And if I do look, it's very briefly. And it's because of my self-esteem, which I am working on. But I am going to try to continue to make these videos. I hope somebody can find some hope in it, and maybe my trials and tribulations can really help somebody else cope, and if necessary, get the help they need. So that's my main purpose for doing these. So I am going to put on my last season of Hannibal, work on my diamond painting, and wait for it to get a little bit cooler. So I do thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it more than you know. And I hope y'all have a wonderful day. And I love you. Bye.